Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Your Own Pathway Leadership and Mental Wellbeing in the Workplace. For those who don't know me, my name is Paia, and I am a trained psychotherapist turned empowerment life coach and organizational leadership consultant, where I bring my experience and my knowledge to empower all of you to forge your own path and to own it. So, happy after 4th of July weekend. I'm recording this the Monday right after the 4th of July weekend. So I hope you all had a restful weekend, especially from work. And today definitely feels like the first week after the holidays. So I hope you all are rested and are ready to go back to work. And so today's episode really focuses what I think this country lacks so much right now, and not just this country, but in workplaces and especially in leadership, is empathy. The lack of empathy seems to be just everywhere, and especially again in the workplace. And the lack of empathy, unfortunately, has a lot to do with how your employees react and how employees, whether or not if employees choose to stay with an employer. Because let's be honest, I've said this in other episodes, is people don't quit jobs, they quit their bosses. And so today's episode, we're going to talk about the lack of empathy in the workplace and what we can do about it. And a lot of this, to me as a therapist, sounds very much like common sense. And yet, there is not common sense when it comes to empathy. Again, as we see a lot of this in this country and in the workplace, and we're all overworked, we're all overtired, we're all exhausted. And we're going to talk more about how we can have empathy again, especially in leadership. So let's get right to the episode today. This is such a critical conversation to have, is the empathy. And especially in 25, I think, even with everything going on with layoffs, with the economy, a lot of people who are employed right now are no longer tolerating the performative care or the detached type of leadership that is so prevalent in 2025. And so, first of all, I'm going to discuss like the lack of empathy at the top. Why is it still so present? And the solutions, the second part is the solutions that we can do to address the lack of empathy in the workplace. So, the empathy gap is very much at the top. And we're living in a time where the words like people first and mental health matters are so in our face and plastered all over the workplace, and policies and leadership decks and all of this is like mental health matters, all of this matters, listening, conversation. And is it really happening though? Is it really happening? And let's be honest. Yes, we're doing all that. Yes, we're addressing mental health, but none of that really matters if you don't have empathy. Empathy is still missing in action in all of this. So many employees, especially I think, women and BIPOC professionals and those in emotionally laborious roles, are often being led by managers and executives who avoid having the hard conversations, who unfortunately prioritize output over emotional reality, who gaslight or ignore the emotional fatigue of their workers, and especially dismiss life circumstances as excuses. And you know what? I can tell you from my professional experience, all the things that I just mentioned, I have encountered all of that, especially doing the type of work that I did, doing social work, doing therapy. All the feelings that I just mentioned are often dismissed and gaslighted. And so, what is the result of this? The result is you get people who are exhausted, who feel unsupported, and are silently suffering teams. And again, I'm sure all of us have felt this, and I have felt this, and this is why I am doing these episodes. So, why does empathy still feel optional in leadership? Especially, I feel like, especially here in America, we're such a capitalist society. And so the word empathy often brings, oh, Why do we need empathy? What is that? That's such a soft skill. That's not a hard skill. And so, why is empathy still lacking at the top? Leadership, organizations, and all of that. So, number one, it's an outdated leadership conditioning. Let me say that again. It's an outdated leadership conditioning to have empathy. Many leaders were trained that empathy equated with weakness. And it's important that they lead with logic and be detached and metrics. It's more important than the humanity. Doing is more important than being. And we were all taught that check the box, meet the damn quota, and protect the brand, but never, how are you doing? How's life going? How's your heart? How are you feeling? We don't ask those questions. It's all about the end goal. It's not about what it is in between. And so there's a lot of outdated leadership conditioning. Number two is the emotional illiteracy. And what I mean by this is that oftentimes, when I first said people don't quit jobs, they quit leaders. And a lot of leaders don't, have the emotional capacity, or there's such a lack. Leadership is the lack of emotional literacy. And what this means is that we don't promote leaders based on emotional intelligence. How many of us, I know I have said, when you looked at a boss and you thought, how did they get this job? Like, how did they truly get that job? They lack understanding, they lack emotional intelligence, they lack feeling. And a lot of us have asked, how did they get that job? It's because leaders are not promoted on emotional intelligence. And we often promote people based on results. So what happens is we end up with we're seeing this are people with unregulated egos in powerful positions with no skills to manage, no human dynamics, no trauma informed practices, who don't know how to regulate their emotions. And again, we're seeing a lot of this right now. So, number two is the emotional illiteracy of leaders. Number three is that corporate culture is all about performance over people. And so, again, especially here in the US, when it is a capitalist society, we pressure to produce. There's pressure to produce, and there's pressure to make profits and protect the profits and meet those damn KPIs. I'm so sick of KPIs. I'm glad I don't have to do KPIs again. So, for those who are still doing KPIs, I'm sorry. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with KPIs anymore. And so, because we're dealing with all those damn KPIs and to produce and protect and make profits, empathy is seen as a distraction, unfortunately. And this is not seen as a core leadership competency. So, what happens when there is a lack of empathy in leadership is the lack of empathy in leadership isn't just convenient, it's often psychologically and emotionally damaging. And what this often leads to is it leads to their employees feeling burnt out, which often is disguised as, oh, high performance. Anxiety is masked as, oh, eagerness. And over functioning employees often do not have any type of support. Oftentimes, when employees are feeling this way, the result is silent suffering and toxic team dynamics. And again, I have been through this and I have worked professionally with clients who also felt the same way. And of course, what happens is like there's poor retention. When you lack empathy, when you don't address this, you have poor retention and you have quiet quitting. People are quietly quitting their jobs. And again, I've done that too. And so, one of the things that also happens is the microaggressions and Unfortunately, there's a lot of microaggressions in these workplaces who lack empathy, and that's another episode that I will be doing is microaggressions in the workplace. Is when this happens, microaggressions often go unaddressed, and unfortunately, sometimes it's unintentionally encouraged. And when you don't have any of this, like when you lack empathy, you also lack psychological safety. And when you don't have psychological safety, it's often not just in one department, it's like the whole organizations. So when employees don't feel seen, heard, or protected, they disengage and they break down. And of course, they quit, whatever it is that, all the things that I just mentioned. So we talked about why there's such a lack of empathy. Let's focus on what needs to change to shift the narrative of having empathy in the workplace and especially with leadership. And I just want to be clear, empathy is not just something that is, oh, it's so nice to have. Empathy in leadership is a requirement, and this is how we change the story. So number one, empathy must be modeled at the top. Executives and senior leaders need to set the tone. If they don't lead with like the emotional awareness, it creates a culture of emotional impression. And so everything comes from the top. You know, I love talking about systems. That I love talking about systems, people in their environment, people in their systems. And think about this. If you are a parent and a child sees their parent act or say or talk a certain way, that child is likely going to model the same type of behavior. So if you are a parent, it is up to you to set the tone and to lead how you want your child to be. And so, very much in the workplace, you as a leader need to model and have empathy and have the awareness and express your emotions and not suppress those emotions and especially the empathy. So, model what it looks like to human and empower. And this means admit when you're wrong, name when people seem off. You also need to praise emotional labor, not just the productivity. And a lot of us, you know, people are quitting because when asked, like, why are you quitting? I just want to be recognized. There's no recognition from my supervisor or for higher ups when we do something good. We always get reprimanded. So, yeah, praise the emotional labor and not just the protective and productivity. So, that's number one. Model what looks like, no, empathy must be modeled at the top. So that's number one. Number two is train for emotional intelligence like you train for strategy. Yeah, you know, we train so much for like strategy and this and that, but there's no training on how to have a conversation. There's no training on um, listening. There's no training on conflict resolution or any of that. And so we need to stop treating EQ, emotional intelligence, as fluff, as a soft skill that it's not unnecessary. It needs to be made part of like leadership development. It needs to involve conflict resolution, as I just mentioned. It needs to be part of performance reviews, and the standard needs to be team communication and standards. A lot of people don't think that emotional intelligence or like empathy can be learned, but it really can be. And emotional skills can be learned. Leaders just have to be willing to learn it. So that's number two is train for emotional intelligence like train for strategy. Moving on to number three is, I said this before, I'll say it again, is we need to create systems for psychological safety. If you don't have psychological safety, you're in a workplace. Psychological safety is a must. And this needs to be embedded into the culture and process. So this means normalize mental health check-ins. Just saying, how are you doing? How's it going? How are you handling this? I know that there are new changes. Is there anything that I can help you with? Just normalize mental health check-ins. We also need to create bias interruption protocols. Remember, I talk about I talked about microaggressions. Sometimes a lot of people don't realize that what they're saying could be a microaggression, and the person receiving it may feel a certain way and may try to gaslight themselves, and you know what, I'm just overreacting. Maybe I'm just not used to the culture. Maybe this is how they do it. And I just got to get used to it. And so when you create an environment like that, that person who is receiving the bias or the microaggression or whatever negative feeling it is, they're not going to be willing to come forward. And so companies, leadership needs to create bias interruption protocols. Another thing is HR. No, I know a lot of people dislike HR. And if you're HR watching this is nothing against you. However, we need to empower HR and DEI leaders. I know that DEI is a big topic in 2025, saying how we don't need it. I feel the DEI is so important, such a necessity in workplace. Next is like we need to empower HR and DEI leaders to act and not just observe. Now, I I know that a lot of people don't care for HR and feel like, oh, HR is just there to protect the company. They're not there to advocate or empower employees. And DEI, I know a lot of companies like, oh, we don't do DEI anymore. And there are a lot of companies who still embrace DEI out there also. So we need to empower both HR and DEI leaders to act and not just observe and have a part in this too. Because again, HR, they have the roles to protect the company and whatever, but they also need to be involved in this conversation too, because whenever there is an issue, an employee is advised to go talk to HR about any human relation issues. So it's important to have both HR and DEIs involved in this conversation um, about culture and process. So, and lastly, we need to protect whistleblowers and emotionally burdened employees who feel that there's a lack of psychological safety when there is retaliation from higher ups or when there's threats. Unfortunately, some big cases we've seen out there, there's been a lot of retaliation against employees who choose to speak up about practices. And I actually did a video on this. I'll link it too, about moral dilemmas. And some jobs, there's moral dilemmas. And an employee said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. This is not safe. I got to say something. But then there's a lot of repercussions, there are recommendations. You may lose your job. Whatever the case, when there is a lack of psychological safety, we need to have a process. There needs to be a process to protect whistleblowers and employees who feel emotionally burdened by whatever situation is occurring that they don't feel emotionally safe. So, number 3 is create systems of psychological safety. Number 4 is lead with people, not policies. And I know soaps like standard operation procedures. Oh, what's the soap on this? What's the soap on that? So a lot of companies, it's all about soaps. It's not about people. And it's not enough to say that you care. It shows in the like micro moments in leadership. And how many of us did something happen, or we're just not emotionally or mentally in it? And if you are a leader and you see something going on, or you see that your team is not mentally present for whatever it is, it's okay to cancel that damn meeting if someone's grieving or something else is going on, that is something is taking priority. I said this at the beginning, nothing is an emergency. I think I said that at the beginning. If I didn't, I'm going to preface again. Nothing is an emergency unless you actually work in emergency services where you work with protecting, saving lives, animals. and natural disasters, what it is. Otherwise, cancel the damn meeting. Cancel the damn meeting if it's not that important. Also, let your employees log off when they're emotionally maxed out. You know what I hated when I still worked was I hated having Friday afternoon meetings. Like seriously, who needs to have an Friday afternoon damn meeting at 2 o'clock at 3 p.m.? Who does that? That time, everyone's checked out. Everyone's checked out. You know that you're checked out too if you're a leader. And if you're not checked out, kudos to you. But let's be honest, your team, your employees are all checked out. So let them log off or let them not attend the meeting when they're emotionally maxed out. Also, make room for accommodations without guilt. I think so many of us, especially again here in this country with work, we've been so guilted about our jobs. Like, well, I feel guilty that I did this or that, or I feel guilty, or your boss or somebody guilts you about something that is just so small where it feels very gaslighting and dismissive. So lead with people, not policies, please. Not policies. The damn policies will always be there. People, they're not always going to be there. So lead with people and not policies. Number five, if I didn't mention number four first, number five is we need to make empathy part of accountability. And so what this means is that we ask, how do your employees feel under your leadership? How do you feel? Do you feel safe when you are speaking up? Or is there repercussions? Is there um, um, reprimanding of someone if they were to speak out? And what do exit interviews say about the emotional culture? Now, when I quit a job in 2020, I had the opportunity to do an exit interview, and I was very honest, and I talk about the emotional culture. And I think at that time that I quit, I was like the third person to quit with a particular supervisor. And even though the director listened to me, I also knew that nothing was going to change. I also knew nothing was going to change. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And it's not up to me to decide if they're going to change or not. If nothing get changes, this is about the system. This is not about me, and I'm leaving. So exit interviews, what do they say about the emotional culture? And if you get an opportunity to do an exit interview, I would highly recommend it. I know some people are like it's a waste of time. It doesn't matter anymore. And sometimes people need to hear. If they hear, great. If not, you know what? That's on them, and they're gonna keep seeing a system that is failing. So if your leadership leaves people burned out or broken, it's not sustainable. It's so harmful. It is so harmful. And again, this is why I do these episodes. And a lot of people are burned out and broken, unfortunately, especially in this country. So, excuse me, my final reflection on this about empathy and why it's such a necessity and why it's not present at all is it's 2025. The world is changing, has changed. And employees, like we have the millennials, which I am, and Gen Zs, and we're not tolerating the same shit the previous generations did. And so, employees, our generation and Gen Zs, we're done tolerating the disconnected leadership, the fear, the disrespect, and a lot of us are demanding care, not control. All we want is compassion. Like all we want is compassion, and we want accountability in leadership, not avoidance. It's when we talk accountability and not avoidance, it kind of reminds me of our parents. It's like go to therapy. Well, grew up during a hard time and blah blah blah. It's like, well, then take accountability, not avoidance. And so we ask that for leadership also is to take accountability and not the avoidance. And my final words to this topic is Again, empathy is not a soft skill. It is a necessity, and it is a necessity in survival and leadership. And it's time that we stop treating empathy like an afterthought and start treating it like a foundation to every workplace culture. It is essential for building effective teams and creating a positive workplace, and especially workplace culture. So by understanding the challenges that, that often get and empathy that often get dismissed, it's important for leaders to successfully prioritize empathy. And we all, if you are a true leader and you want to learn and you want to be a good leader and not just be a boss, you take steps to become a better empathetic leader. So that is all for I have. That is all I have for today. I apologize. I am I have a throat. I have I need some water here, so I apologize for coughing, but that is all I have for today. And empathy for anybody who's watching this, I feel that there's such a lack of empathy right now, and just not in the workplace, in the world. And we just need to have kindness, compassion, to listen, to have sympathy and empathy for one another to make the world a better place. Because let's be honest, it is so hard right now. And a lot of us just want some empathy. We just want to be understood. We just want to know that somebody out there, and especially our bosses, understand where we are coming from, our struggles, and that we do want to work, but we just need to have some compassion and understanding. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you are new here and if you like today's video, please hit the like and subscribe button. And otherwise, have a wonderful week. And I will see you all next time. Take care.